happen. We have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And what a week. The Seventh Circuit heard from the defenders of bans on same-sex marriage in Indiana and Wisconsin, and it looks as if they were not buying their arguments, the Seventh Circuit.
Would you check your chair, please? I think you're too low, and it makes me feel like a monster.
I'll come up a little bit if I can, miss.
Did you find the button on the right side?
I'm getting there. Oops, that's down, that's up. Hello, everybody.
That's better.
Let's go.
There we go. And a fifth marriage win in Florida, this time from a federal judge.
Chelsea Manning is not receiving necessary medical treatment from the U.S. military for her transition.
Another Catholic teacher is fired for violating a morals clause, this time for getting pregnant. And she's a lesbian.
A beauty queen comes out in Spain, and within about 5 minutes, another one comes out in Ireland.
We really are everywhere. It looks as if the president of Ecuador is backing down and will allow civil unions.
A man in Ghana was arrested for his crime of homosexuality to keep people in his hometown from lynching him.
Mixed opinions on the new John Lithgow, Alfred Molina movie, Love is Strange. We'll have Chris Cooper's review for you. And we'll review why the Motion Picture Association is slapping R ratings on all gay-themed movies.
And we'll give you all the gay news from the Emmy Awards.
It's not very happy news from the Emmy Awards.
Right.
All right. Well, it was a pretty boring show. Did you watch it?
I watched about half of it, yes.
Yeah, it was a little flat.
Well.
You liked it more than that?
No, I mean, you know, well,
you didn't expect as much.
I liked the in memoriam section.
Well, far more entertaining were the oral arguments at the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago.
Yes.
On the marriage cases in Indiana and Wisconsin.
3 cases from Indiana and 1 from Wisconsin. And you know, the headlines are that this thing is toast. That these judges, you got 2 Democrat judges, one appointed by Clinton, one appointed by Obama, and then a Ronald Reagan judge.
Well, the Ronald Reagan judge,
Richard Posner,
if that's how you want to describe him, is Richard Posner, who's the most famous appeals court judge in the nation, the most cited by every other judge in the nation.
He even has a blog.
He was appointed by Reagan many years ago. He started off as a rank conservative. Actually started off as a liberal, then he got very conservative, and now he's sort of sliding back to liberalism because he says the Republican Party has gone so overboard in its conservatism.
Actually, the quote is, I've become less conservative since the Republican Party started becoming goofy, and he said that in 2012.
So he's a little goofy too if you listen to him on these arguments, and we highly recommend that you go online to listen to the audio of these arguments in the Seventh Circuit. They're a total of an hour and a half. They're very easy to listen to, very understandable. If you write to andyhum@aol.com and get on our mailing list, we'll supply the direct links to you. But you can also just Google Seventh Circuit marriage, same-sex marriage case arguments.
Well, you listened to them. How'd we do?
They were fantastic. They were really fantastic because these, you know, the last Court of Appeals that we talked about a couple of weeks ago was in Ohio, where they were doing cases from 6 cases, 4 states or whatever, and it was very mixed with the judges. And they sound a little reluctant, a couple of them, to come to our side. Not in this one.
No.
This one, they just took these lawyers for the states and ripped them to shreds.
Well, you had and you know, these were not nobodies arguing for these bans. You had the Solicitor General of Indiana and Wisconsin's Assistant Attorney General, Tim Samuelson.
Okay.
And you know, at certain points, they had to say things like, "Your Honor, I don't have an answer for you. I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer.
They didn't even go that far. They just remained silent. And then at one point, Posner asked them a question, one of them a question, and he said, I see there's a yellow light. I think my time is up. And the judges all go, oh, forget it. That's not going to save you. And he says, well, it was worth a try.
Well, all right. So the interesting thing is that they did offer some arguments. I mean, Indiana's guy Fisher, he used that old argument that heterosexuals can accidentally reproduce and need to be nudged towards marriage, which, of course, was the winning argument in New York.
Well,
when,
some years ago from a really nutty judge.
In 2006, but no, this was Governor Eliot Spitzer and Mayor Michael Bloomberg sending lawyers in to defend the ban on same-sex marriage. And those were the arguments that they made, and they were winning. And now they're just seen as, we thought they were pretty funny then, but now it's just seen as laughable.
Well, Posner, who in spite of his moving away from conservatism, is known as a very conservative judge.
He's known as what's called an empiricist, and he was demanding evidence. What's the evidence for what you're saying? And
what's the evidence that there will be harm if we legalize same-sex marriage? You know, you can speculate about anything. You could have speculated harm from legalizing contraception for women in Connecticut in 1964. Certainly, you could have gone slower on that. What is it that you think is going to happen that's bad? And he must have asked them 10 times for just speculation about what could be wrong, and they wouldn't even speculate. So then he tears into them because he's really on the side of the kids of gay parents.
This is one of Kennedy's concerns on the Supreme Court.
Exactly. But now this is Posner. Posner, who is someone who is so famous for being so, safe about conservative principles. And a lot of this is coming out, I think, of his more libertarian bent.
That's a very conservative, as we've said before, marriage is a very conservative concern.
Well, here's what he called their arguments on the right wing, the guys who were defending the ban. Pathetic, ridiculous, absurd. He cited the amicus brief from the Family Equality Council about all the harm done to kids of gay parents. And he specifically gave the example of a lesbian couple, one of whom died and the other one wasn't told of her death because they weren't married. He referred to a history of savage discrimination against gay people and hate as the basis for these laws.
And he even said to one of the lawyers for the other side, he said, you want the children of gay people to be worse off in society than the children of heterosexual parents.
And they did keep
because then they start saying, well, don't worry, the gays are very stable. And they're very stable and nurturing, and they choose to be parents, and there's no problem with them. It's just these darned heterosexuals who can accidentally get pregnant, and have kids, that we have to move towards marriage. Yeah. That was their argument.
Well, and what they finally said, because this underlies that argument, and they finally were forced to say explicitly that if you legalize same-sex marriage, you devalue marriage per se, and that will drive straight people away from marriage. And another judge in this, Hamilton, who was the Obama appointee, said, so you think that kids are better off with married parents, and that's a prime goal of the state. So how's that working out for you when the rates of kids born to unmarried parents has increased 50% in the last 10 years in your state without same-sex couples being allowed to marry? So what is the state actually doing about this?
They were allowed to marry elsewhere, and it just destroyed everybody's morale.
Evidently.
In Indiana.
Evidently. So then what it came down to, which was also interesting, was, and our friend James Essex was arguing the Wisconsin case, and he was trying to make an argument for heightened scrutiny, for taking these laws and casting a suspicious eye on them because they apply to a discriminated against group.
They weren't going for that too much.
Well, Posner said, oh, please, I don't care about this heightened scrutiny nonsense. Who cares? It's about, people are discriminated against. This law was ridiculous and based on hate, and I don't need heightened scrutiny. And then the other thing, they were also asked about Baker, because the Wisconsin guy was trying to defend, or maybe it was Indiana, was trying to say.
Baker, we'll explain what Baker is. In Minnesota, there was a gay couple, this is the Baker v. Nelson case, where they tried to get married, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Many years ago.
1972. But the Supreme Court declined to hear the case, and there was no decision, but they did say for lack of a federal issue.
Right. So the right wing keeps trying to argue
they're clinging to that.
Well, they're saying that is the ruling Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage, because there's been nothing since. And everyone else on our side says, excuse me, there's the Lawrence decision and Romer, not to mention Windsor and everything. We are way past Baker. And they started to discuss this in these arguments. They sort of wandered off it and didn't get terribly specific about it.
But except for the Windsor decision, they had some opportunity there, and in the California case, which they declined to hear or they sent back.
Well, they decided on a different basis.
On standing,
yes.
But they had an opportunity, and they specifically said that this is a matter for the states. They did say that in the decision. They did not give us the sweeping 50 states, despite all the nice things they said about us in the Windsor decision.
Well, what they said, and this is, again, Kennedy and Windsor, this is a matter for the states, but you cannot discriminate on the basis of animus towards LGBT people.
Right.
And that's where the conflict comes.
Maybe that's why hate kept coming up in this discussion.
Then the other thing that got discussed a lot in these arguments was, well, should this be decided on the basis of equal protection, or is due process involved here too? Now, frankly, I don't care, and I've never understood what due process is about, but it seems to have to do with whether marriage is a fundamental right.
You, the descendant of the Supreme Court Justice of the United States?
That one has always been slightly mysterious to me. Maybe, I'm sure many viewers will enlighten me on due process, but equal protection seems to be what Posner cares about, and seems to be what this court cares about. And to think that this court is doing anything but completely getting rid of these laws in Indiana and Wisconsin, barring same-sex marriage, would be ridiculous.
I like what James Essex said. You listened to it. I only read the news reports. This is our lawyer from the ACLU, saw him on the show a couple of weeks ago. He said that gay people, he cited Scalia. He said gay people have the same liberty interest, and that once you eliminate tradition as an argument and moral disapproval as an argument, there is no argument versus same-sex marriage.
Exactly, and he pointed out that you didn't have to go to certain things to reach the right decision, and he did a good job of that. And there are a couple of ancillary pieces of information that play into this, with Posner's concentration on what's best for the kids. We're just unearthing in LA a case from over a year ago of an 8-year-old boy, Gabriel Fernandez, who was tortured and murdered by his mother and her boyfriend, an opposite-sex couple, because they found him too effeminate and he played with dolls. So this is what happens in an opposite-sex relationship when they think the kid is too effeminate. And there's a new study out of the Williams Institute that 20% of kids in foster care in LA are LGBT. We've used even bigger numbers in New York for homeless kids. And that there needs to be a focus on these kids.
But despite all that, we are not going to start a movement to ban heterosexual marriage.
We are not. But a few training classes might be a good idea.
Yes.
All right, so that is the big headline case this week on same-sex marriage. But also in the headlines is Florida. We've been telling you how local judges there, county by county, have been striking the ban on same-sex marriage in the state. And I've suggested we may be going street by street soon. But in fact, a federal district court judge in Florida has now become the 5th judge and the first federal judge in Florida to strike the marriage ban.
This is Judge Robert Hinkle, and he said that the ban stems entirely from moral disapproval of the practice of homosexuality. And he says it's not enough. But he stayed his own decision. It's the 38th win we've had in court since Windsor. And
he did allow some benefits for a widow whose wife had died.
Yes. He also said specifically that the Minnesota case, did not settle the issue in 1972 at the High Court, and he did use strict scrutiny, not heightened scrutiny, strict scrutiny in his, that's
Which
the
is
highest
even
level.
bigger. Yeah.
Papa Bear.
Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile, in Colorado, the 10th Circuit stayed their decision again because there was a deadline there, and it's not resolved, so people are not able to get married again there.
The inside baseball on the race to the Supreme Court for a marriage decision continues. They're assembling quite a team on the Utah case. It already has a local lawyer, Peggy Tomczyk, who is regarded as really good and hot. And she's been working with the National Center for Lesbian Rights. They've been involved almost from the beginning.
Kate Kendall's group, yes.
Yeah. And they were recently joined by a former Solicitor General of the United States from a big D.C. firm. And now the big Boston LGBT law firm GLAAD,
Gay and Lesbian Advocates and Defenders,
whose Mary Buonato won the first marriage case in Massachusetts
in 2003, folks, a long time ago.
So GLAAD has now joined the team on the Utah case, and I'm sure that they're trying to move this ahead to the Supreme Court ahead of the Olson-Boyce Virginia case.
Right. Everybody's very competitive, but that's America.
And what the heck, we'll get a decision faster that way.
Associate Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said this week that the main theme in Windsor is not federalism, but the right to be treated with equal dignity.
Exactly. It's not about states' rights. It's about what trumps all that is the ban on discriminating.
Right. Now, but by the way, we should give credit to grassroots activists. There was demonstrations in Chicago the day before this thing.
Yep.
And people all over Wisconsin, they had a bus that sort of picked people up along the way and demonstrated for this before going down to the
hundreds of people.
Madison, Racine, Milwaukee. So everybody was heard from.
And tons of people listening to these arguments online. And again, we urge you to do so. There is a marriage case coming up in Montana, and they've set a schedule for briefs and arguments there, so that's going to move ahead.
In Virginia, a clerk petitioned the Supreme Court saying lower courts striking down bans on same-sex marriage are subverting Windsor and have not enforced the 14th Amendment, but demeaned the democratic process and reduced freedom.
Well, this is again that clerk is trying to claim that Windsor said this is all up to the states and is conveniently ignoring the part of Windsor that said you cannot discriminate.
You can't pick and choose. You can't be cafeteria constitutionalists.
The only point to the federalism argument in Windsor, the states have a right to choose, is that we have to, at this point, go state by state to challenge these laws because states do have a right to set those laws at the moment.
Yeah, and the federal court has the right to get rid of them.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to continue to pursue.
Well, who was it on the other side this week? I only read the headline. Who said we've lost, and it's all going to happen by 2016.
Read beyond the headline
myself. Give it up.
In Minnesota, in Little Falls, Minnesota, two gay men who had wanted to hold their wedding reception and wedding at a lodge called Rice Creek, which hires itself out for
it's a hunting and recreation lodge.
But it is available for rent for weddings and receptions. But when they realized it was two gay men getting married, they rejected them. Well, now the men have reached a settlement with the lodge, which is paying for their wedding and reception at another venue
to the tune of $8,500, including putting people up.
That's a pretty cheap wedding.
Well, I don't want to, but not everything is as expensive as it is in New York.
Well, I bet a lot of people in Minnesota are paid more than that for weddings and receptions.
So these guys are going to marry at Camp Ripley on August 29th.
But I assume Rice Creek is not going to be able to reject same-sex couples anymore because the whole point was that Minnesota has a non-discrimination law and they have to honor that. Right. At the State Department in Washington, the LGBT group is upset because the federal government is eliminating most forms of domestic partnership, which they used to offer before marriage became legal.
Well, they're saying this makes it very dangerous for them because, hey, you're sending us into a lot of anti-gay countries. If we get married, it has a certain resonance, just like for all these Catholic school teachers who get fired. And we need domestic partnership in some cases to be respected.
Well, we need the benefits that we can get under domestic partnership without having to go ahead and get married and put ourselves at risk.
And it would be nice if we were all the same, but we're not, is what they're sort of saying.
Because of the way other countries treat us.
That's right.
Yeah, so we can only go so far. All right, are we finished with marriage news?
Yes, I am.
All right, let's move on to other news. In Butte, Montana, a lesbian teacher, Sheila Everson, is suing Catholic Central Schools. She was fired because she got pregnant and she is unmarried.
If only she'd gotten an abortion, she wouldn't be fired.
She got pregnant by alternative insemination because she is a lesbian.
And they're saying she violated her contract that says that she had to practice the Catholic faith and work and outside work. I mean, look, I understand, having certain standards everywhere. We even have them here at Gay USA. But can you demand essentially everybody be a Catholic? No.
But can you demand in a school setting that people uphold certain tenets?
Well,
the real problem is that they're singling us out.
Yeah.
They're not going after heterosexuals who are having sex outside marriage. They're not going after anybody who's masturbating.
Probably they don't go after people who divorce and remarry. Probably.
We don't know that
But she's got a good lawyer who won a similar case in Ohio that said a morality clause in a contract does not override state and federal laws against, in this case, sex discrimination. Because that's what she's being fired for, pregnancy.
And what they're suing under is the Civil Rights Act of '64, which explicitly protects women's right to pregnancy.
I mean, I'm not trying to be smart here, but the Blessed Virgin Mary did not get pregnant by her husband.
So they say.
Well, so they say. Actually, Christianity would be so much easier to swallow if they didn't make up these stories, but all right.
In Arizona, the voters of Tempe have passed a non-discrimination law for city workers.
Overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah.
This is,
now, they say it's the first one in Arizona for city workers. In fact, the City Council of Tempe approved a non-discrimination law for the city itself for its LGBT residents earlier this year.
In Pennsylvania, in South Williamsport, and we've told you about this, but we have some more news about it, the school district there canceled an upcoming production of Spamalot. There have been people on this story dogging them, hitting them with FOIL requests and everything to find out why they did it, and digging up all the paperwork, and they found out that it was due to the gay content. An initial report on it among them even said homosexuality does not exist in our community. But that was removed from the report.
Because it's untrue.
Yeah, well, it's idiotic. And the lawyer probably got a hold of that and said, this isn't a good argument.
Yeah. Some political news. In North Carolina, Clay Aiken is running for a congressional seat against a Republican incumbent. Reports are that his fundraising is a little low, but there's some dispute about that. In Oklahoma City, a transgender woman, Paula Sophia, was in a runoff for a state house seat there that had previously been occupied by gay and lesbian politicians. She came up just a few votes short. At first, she thought she was going to demand a recount, but she's decided to concede. And she had some problems with the local Democratic Party, which didn't want her to run. She came very close in spite of that.
Did we do this Wikipedia story inside the Capitol last week?
Not yet, but I have one more political story first.
Let's hear it.
Scott Lively has qualified as an independent on the Massachusetts ballot for governor.
Pending litigation against him.
Yes. He got 10,000 signatures on petitions to get him on the ballot. He's still facing trial in Springfield.
Eugene V. Debs got 1 million votes, and he was in jail, prison.
And many dead candidates have gotten votes too.
I voted for some of them.
Scott Lively, I think, is a different case.
We vote for a dead person when they can't get off the ballot, and you don't want, the other person to win.
And you want to have the ability to appoint the new person.
At least, at the very least.
Okay, so now the House of Representatives.
Well, someone inside the Capitol is editing Wikipedia entries for Orange is the New Black with transphobic comments. And so this has become a big issue. They know it's coming from, I believe, a House computer. So HRC wants Speaker Boehner to investigate. You're going after that IRS woman. How about going after this person?
And the right wing is saying that, well, this was done as official business because, ENDA is up for debate in the House, so we should be able to comment.
Well, yeah, I mean, you do have to put up with a lot while things are being debated in many respects. I remember when the gay rights bill finally passed in New York after 15 years, the person wanted to do it, one of the TV shows locally wanted to do another debate about it the next day. I said, no, we won. Why don't you interview us about how happy we are, but we won. I don't want to sit here with somebody screaming in my ear about it's no good anymore. It's the law now, okay? Mm-hmm. So I didn't do the show. So
how do you feel about our Governor Cuomo, who is facing a primary in a couple of weeks from a left-wing challenger, now again making an announcement that he supports the Gender Identity and Expression Non-Discrimination Act, which he just failed to lift one finger to pass in the legislature,
right,
and thereby getting endorsed by the Empire State Pride agenda?
I know. I think they're settling cheap, is what I would say. I mean, an election is a time to demand things of candidates, get them on the record, do candidate surveys with your local candidates, make them commit to things. Barack Obama, when he was running for state senate, committed to same-sex marriage.
And then conveniently forgot it for about 15 years.
So yes, look, we have a fairly, you know him as a hero who got same-sex marriage passed in New York, and I give him credit for that because he's a bull, and he knocked heads and he made it happen. And that was significant. But on a lot of other things, he's relatively conservative.
He is.
For our tastes.
And this business of not fighting for the gender law is ridiculous. And then we are inundated every week by stories like this poor kid in Philadelphia, transgender man Riley Matthew Moscatel, 17 years old, jumps in front of an Amtrak train because he's depressed. And
I wish we had more information on this, but it's kind of sketchy that there was an early report in Detroit that 3 transgender women were shot, 1 died, though she is unidentified, and you say possibly not transgender.
Not confirmed as transgender yet, but the other 2 are transgender women who were shot, and the violence continues.
This was in the Palmer Park area. In New York City, the killer of a gay man, Mark Carson, in the Village in 2013, Elliot Morales, is on his 3rd attorney in 15 months. He's considering representing himself now.
Well, it's a great way to delay the whole process.
And he said he wasn't told he could testify for the grand jury that indicted him for second-degree murder as a hate crime. He admitted the crime 6 times. The next hearing is September 2nd.
And we told you a few weeks ago about the 2 gay men who were murdered in Seattle. They'd been enticed to a gay bar by a message on Grindr.
This is Dwayne Anderson Young and Ahmed Saeed.
And so there was a nationwide hunt for the presumed killer. He was arrested in New Jersey recently.
Ali Muhammad Brown.
He's now back in Seattle, where he has confessed to the murder of the men, plus a couple of others in his spree. And he is now saying that he did it as revenge for U.S. military action in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria.
Yikes. That means that any of us could have been killed, but he chose gays.
Yes, which leads me to believe that his motives were a little more complicated than that.
Right.
And the U.S. military is still not providing hormone treatment to Chelsea Manning in Fort Leavenworth. She published a letter this week saying that in spite of Defense Secretary Hagel talking about his willingness to investigate better treatment of transgender people in the service and other promises to help Chelsea, no hormone treatment.
Well, she is. All they're doing is letting her dress as a woman. But she says in the letter that military jailers, quote, reinforce and impose strong gender norms.
And evidently there's a rule that they would have to discharge her if they acknowledge her as trans.
Well, they can't,
because they can't have trans people serving.
So where would they? Would she serve the sentence somewhere else? Would it be finished? This is a brave new world, isn't it?
It is a complicated new world, and a silly new world, because V. Stiviano is now claiming that that Donald Sterling, the racist ex-owner of the L.A. Clippers, is gay.
I never slept with him. He prefers. Wait a minute. Wait for it. This is the quote. He prefers Congress with males. I would prefer Congress with females, and I'm homosexual. We would be doing a lot better in this country if we had Congress with females.
It's all involved with lawsuits. All right. International news.
Oh, we have a lot of it this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the best stories are the beauty queens.
You want to start with them?
Sure, why not? Miss Spain 2013. Do I want to start with beauty queens? I do. Patricia Rodriguez has come out in an Instagram picture. That's her on the bottom.
She's the bottom.
In this picture. With her girlfriend. She posted this picture on Instagram as her way of coming out. We say, welcome, Patricia. Thank you for coming out.
And this is the reason I'm wearing this tie today. There's an international beauty contest in Ireland called the Rose of Tralee, okay? They have roses, women from all over the world who have Irish connections, who come to the little town of Tralee, where Ann and I have been for different reasons.
Playing golf.
And they crowned this year Maria Walsh, the Philadelphia Rose, as the Rose of Tralee, and she is an out lesbian. It did not come up in the competition.
Welcome, Maria.
It did not come up in the competition, but she's out. And she's very heartened by the feedback she's gotten. The chair of the competition, Anthony O'Gara, said he's delighted by the win of Ms. Walsh. Her sexuality will no doubt create some interest, hopefully all positive. The other roses are standing by her.
Yeah.
And but of course the big question is how she's going to handle St. Patrick's Day in New York, because the Rose of Tralee always gets invited and feted, celebrated in New York at the parade. Now she's an out lesbian. They would say we don't have a problem with that as long as she doesn't wear a pin or any identifying marks.
They always invited Chris Quinn when she was Speaker of the City Council to march in the parade.
We are urging everybody to boycott it until they allow Irish gay groups to march, which they don't. And the mayor boycotts, most politicians boycott. So we will ask the Rose of Tralee not to march,
or to talk about it publicly, or to we want her to talk about it publicly, to confront the officials of the parade about their exclusionary policies. And we know that we have many Philadelphia viewers, and maybe some of you know Maria Walsh. Maybe you are Maria Walsh.
Hi, Maria. So that's what we'd like.
Write to andyhum@aol.com.
I'll send you a letter we wrote to the mayor, signed by over 200 people and organizations, about why we don't want to participate in this parade until they become an integrated parade.
And I suspect,
as they are in Ireland, your home country.
Well, her home country.
Well, she's from Ireland.
She is.
She's originally Irish. She only left 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
She's got a hell of a story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also with a hell of a story is British soldier Deborah Penny, who turns out to be the first out transgender British soldier in combat. She is serving in Afghanistan now.
She's a bomb disposal expert for the last 30 years, and she's said to have won the respect of fellow soldiers after transitioning, which is she's got two kinds of courage there. Britain banned trans personnel until 2000. We still do in the United States, as we noted. And the UK gay group, Stonewall, put the Army on its list of top 100 gay-friendly workplaces. How's that?
Pretty good. If you like armies.
Yeah.
And back to Ireland, in Dublin, thousands showed up at the annual March for Marriage Equality. There's going to be a referendum there next year.
In the first half sometime.
Yes, we don't know exactly when yet.
But in the U.S. Virgin Islands, 25,000 marched against same-sex marriage. They were inspired by anti-gay demonstrations in Jamaica. A senator
They call themselves Christians.
Well, a senator from St. Croix has proposed opening marriage to gay couples there.
Yeah. So they're out in force against it. And Lithuania TV rejected a very mild pro-gay video.
Well, it may be a violation of the law on the protection of minors against the detrimental effects of public information. For that is the name of the law. That is it. It now goes to the Inspector of Journalistic Ethics. Well, it reminds me of like the NBC censor on the Saturday Night Show. You know, they would do skits during the rehearsal, and the censor would stand there. I mean, she was very stereotypical, and she would take notes and things. They had to get past her. They couldn't do it.
I've dealt with them. Worse, in Ghana, a gay man, 21 years old, was arrested purportedly to protect him from villagers who wanted to grab him and kill him because they said he was having sex with men and recruiting them.
Well, actually, yeah, that's the charge that he's under, is recruiting. They said he was going to be lynched for wearing women's clothes. The local sheikh condemned him and led a crusade against him, and his family was threatened with weapons, and they are living in fear.
And lest you think this is all nonsense, a mob actually killed a man in May under similar circumstances.
But the Commission for Human Rights there has spoken up for him and demanded protection for him and his family. So he's not totally out, on a limb, but it doesn't look very comfortable.
Now, we have talked endlessly and repeatedly about the U.S. evangelists who go around the world promoting these kinds of laws and this kind of fear and paranoia
It's
and
one
violence.
of our chief exports now.
Exactly. And one of the major organizations doing that is something called the World Congress of Families.
May I confess, I had not heard of that name as an organization. You'd heard of them before?
Yes.
Okay.
And they're heavily supported by the Mormon Church, I might add.
Right.
So they are about to have a big conclave in Melbourne, Australia.
Or maybe not.
Maybe not, because they have had their bookings canceled by 2 Catholic churches, 1 wedding venue, and 1 other venue that is nameless at this point.
Well, they're saying it's because of safety, that they can't ensure their safety.
Because there are big demonstrations scheduled against them.
Now, of course, the right wing just won the right at the United States Supreme Court not to have a buffer zone around abortion clinics so that they can go demonstrate. You want the right to demonstrate. We certainly have the right to demonstrate. We're not going to hurt you. When was the last time any of us hurt anybody in a demonstration?
And the lovely Mike Huckabee has been speaking up in defense of them. Do you ever watch his Fox show?
I can only stay with it for about 3 minutes.
Yes.
And then I have to turn it off.
But I do feel compelled to check in on it sometimes just to see what he's ranting about this week.
I watch those wily foxes sometimes.
Well, I don't much.
And pardon me if I say this, but the women, of course, are indistinguishable because every one of them is a thin blonde, right?
Yes, but the men are pretty indistinguishable, too, because they're just
by their
idiots.
politics.
Yeah. And we will miss Berlin out gay mayor Klaus Wowereit.
Yeah.
Who is resigning after 13 years in office.
He once characterized Berlin as poor but sexy, to which I would say, ich bin ein Berliner.
You're a donut?
Yeah, I know. That's what it really means.
And another story out of Germany, a court there has upheld a landlady's eviction of a gay man because he was too noisy in his apartment building. He was accused of being up all night having sex in a squeaky sling.
Wow.
Just keep it down, be nice to the neighbors.
All right. Israeli marriage law is pretty complicated, but stay with this story. A state rabbinic court is forbidding a woman to bring her children to meet her female lover. Okay? She's married to a man, but she's going through a divorce case with him. Yeah. She has a female partner, lover. The court
U.S. courts have done that too.
Well, it's her husband wouldn't give her what's called a get, a permission to divorce, which is terrible that even exists, unless the court issued such an order. Israel does not allow civil divorce to Jewish couples, and they must go through the rabbinic courts.
Wow.
It's so it's a I got to learn more about it. Our viewers are always informing us about the nuances of Israeli law.
And in Ecuador, the president met with LGBT activists and has finally issued his approval of civil unions. He's been fairly anti-gay, but he's now
seen the light.
On this part, anyway.
In the Dominican Republic, they banned a Miley Cyrus concert planned for September 13th for promoting lesbian sex. Being gay is not a crime there. And the U.S. Ambassador, Wally Brewster, is openly gay.
Yeah.
And the papal nuncio to the Dominican Republic is being tried in the Vatican. They took him from for child molestation.
They said they would. They haven't yet. Queen Elizabeth has given a royal pardon to Alan Turing from his conviction for gross indecency.
That's the crime.
How many years ago was that?
52, I think it was.
Okay.
He was the World War II codebreaker. But the other 49,999 people convicted under the law were not pardoned.
Yeah. A couple of entertainment notes from Britain. The BBC has commissioned a new TV sitcom with transgender themes, Boy Meets Girl.
Yep, we have a picture of that. Yeah, there it is. It's about a 26-year-old guy falling for a 40-year-old woman, a transgender woman named Judy. It's the result of a BBC search for positive transgender characters.
And the transgender woman is played by a transgender actress.
Rebecca Root, who started transitioning 11 years ago.
And Channel 4 in Britain, which is the competing TV channel, is doing what is described as a new outrageous show by the Queer as Folk creator.
They're pushing the limits.
Called Cucumber. They announced their fall schedule or their upcoming schedule. They're also doing a movie. You want to talk about
I'm just saying that it's the same guy who did Queer as Folk, Russell Davies, and Cucumber has something to do with strength of erection.
Along a vegetable gradation.
They're saying it's so risque it wouldn't get on an American network.
I bet it will eventually.
And the other one is a lesbian.
The Price of Salt is an old Patricia Highsmith novel, and Rooney Mara and Cate Blanchett are going to play lovers.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
I pay to see that.
Yeah, me too. And they're going to do a series following a trans man's sex change.
Okay, now that's British. We're going to go back to AIDS news now?
We are.
Okay. The AIDS Health Care Foundation in LA is launching an ad campaign against Truvada as a daily preventative. I hope it's reverse psychology. The AIDS Healthcare Foundation says don't take it, and we say, who the hell are you to tell me not to take something that's going to prevent me from getting HIV? I'm taking it.
Well, their argument is that it is not as effective as the government claims because people are unlikely to adhere to the schedule of taking it.
And people are unlikely to adhere to condoms all the time.
Exactly.
Or to, eating their, breakfast every day.
Right. So, and their alternative that they're pushing is condoms, as if people are going to be.
Something's wrong over there.
It's strange. So, I think what we need is a campaign that explains all of this. There's pre-exposure prophylaxis for people who are HIV negative and having lots of unprotected sex. If you're not having lots of unprotected sex, maybe just occasionally, you might want to rely on PEP, post-exposure prophylaxis.
Well, you only have to take, because Truvada you take every day, and you have to take it at least 4 or 5 times a week for it to be effective, according to the latest studies. But preferably every day.
Yeah.
And post-exposure is like for about a month.
Right.
A regimen of drugs.
Condoms for everyone, obviously, and treatment if you are HIV positive to keep you healthy and to make you undetectable in your viral load, which will make you almost unable to transmit.
I don't know what makes the AIDS Healthcare Foundation so reactionary, but GMHC here on the East Coast, and we're not always right, but GMHC is hosting a PrEP rally on Fire Island on Saturday, August 30th from 2 to 3 p.m. at Whitehall in the Pines.
Yeah. In L.A., a young teenage girl who's a science buff and who is entering science competitions and everything, took as her question recently, what trees are producing a fungus that kills people with HIV or with compromised immune systems. This has evidently been a problem for years that they have not figured out. Traditionally, eucalyptus trees carry this fungus that has been a danger to people with compromised immune systems. But in this case, they found that in the LA area, it wasn't the eucalyptus trees. In Australia, it's the eucalyptus trees. In the Pacific Northwest, it's Douglas firs. But this girl set to work on this and found the trees that were carrying this fungus that was hurting people with AIDS.
Now, let me ask you a question. If you're adhering to your drugs,
Yeah.
I mean, is it not a risk to you, being around this fungus?
I don't know, but if you are getting sick with fungal diseases of unknown origin, it is really important that you not ignore that and that you get to the doctor because early treatment works.
Beware the Douglas fir in the United States.
In the Pacific Northwest.
Equality California got the Assembly to pass a resolution calling on Obama to get HHS and the FDA to end the ban on gay male blood and to base it on modern science. Maybe they need to get in touch with this young teenage girl.
Well, the other interesting thing about the blood donations is that the need for blood donations has plummeted because surgery has changed. There's more laparoscopic surgery and just medical methods have changed, so they don't need as much blood for transfusion. So in fact, the people who are in the business of selling blood for transfusions to hospitals are panicking because their business is going down. So, you know, maybe gay men shouldn't worry so much about
And in
having
New York,
to
the Cuomo administration, I said something, you know, how conservative they were in many respects, but they are moving forward with their promise to for their HIV prevention plan to reduce new infections from 3,400 a year in New York to 730 by 2020 by including a promotion of Truvada and, of course, a lot of testing and treatment.
Okay. Entertainment news?
Yeah. Oh, I should say, by the way, going back to international a second, we told you that the Sultan of Brunei was in line to buy the plaza. He's a bad guy. He's denying that he's interested, but we'll see. Could be just a ruse to get us off the case.
It could.
All right.
We'll keep an eye on
Entertainment.
Emmys?
Sure.
I read, aside from watching a show, which I thought was flat and boring, I then was struck by how many gay people were losing in various categories.
Well, there were a lot of gay people nominated.
Well, that was my story a couple of weeks ago.
Well, give them the good news first.
Well, I just want to review that these were set to be the gayest Emmys ever. They had almost surpassed the Tonys in the number of LGBT nominees, and they were LGBT. They were across the board. And so I thought, whoa, this is going to be hot.
And, you know, I mean, you know, they weren't all picked to win, but Matt Bomer in The Normal Heart was every critic picked him to win for Best Supporting Actor in a TV movie, and it went to Martin Freeman.
Well, here are the Normal Heart winners. The Normal Heart won for Best TV Movie. Ryan Murphy accepted the award. The whole crew got up on stage, including Larry Kramer in his Act Up hat and his scarf swaddling him. I was not happy with Ryan Murphy's speech, which said, you know, and we, you know, this wouldn't have been made without Larry. It's all Larry. And so we want young people to take this example and go out and get involved in something and find something you care about.
What can we do? What can we do, Ryan?
Willing to give up your life for.
What can we do?
Look up AMFAR or the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation and check that out.
Now, there's nothing wrong with those organizations. They've done a lot of good work, but that's not activism.
No. So the Normal
I'm
Heart.
surprised Larry didn't say something.
Why do you think they had the scarf around his mouth? I just made that up. So the Normal Heart won for Best TV Movie, and it won a makeup award. Here's who associated with the Normal Heart lost.
But wait, before you go on for makeup, I mean, Matt Bomer wasn't made, I mean, he was made up a bit, but he lost 40 pounds to play him when he's sick.
I have a punchline on this.
Okay.
They won a makeup award. They lost the special effects makeup award. They also lost for
Well, it wasn't special effects.
Mark Ruffalo, Julia Roberts, Jim Parsons, Joe Mantello, Alfred Molina, Larry Kramer as writer, Danny Moder for cinematography, Julia Roberts' husband, Matt Bomer, Ryan Murphy as director of the movie, and the Special Effects Makeup Award, and several others. I just got tired of writing them all down.
And then
after
Laverne
a while.
Cox did not win for Orange is the New Black.
No, but Orange is the New Black did win a casting award. Jim Parsons did win for Big Bang Theory.
But he doesn't play a gay character.
He
He
does
plays
not.
a funny nerd.
Jane
He
Lynch.
wins a lot.
Jane Lynch won as the host of Hollywood Game Night as Best Game Show host, but lost. What'd she lose? She lost she was nominated as Best Narrator for Penguins Waddle All the Way. But she won for Hollywood Game Night. Yeah, so the winners, those were the few winners. Jim Parsons, The Normal Heart Movie, Jane Lynch, Orange is the New Black casting, Normal Heart makeup. Losers, Jodie Foster, Paris Barkley, Laverne Cox, Jesse Tyler Ferguson, Nathan Lane, all the Normal Heart losers, Kevin Spacey.
It's an honor to be nominated.
Andre Brower, who plays a gay character on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Derek Huff on Dancing with the Stars, Tim Gunn for Project Runway. Lots of losers.
Any closet cases lose?
Edie Falco.
That's true. I like the show, Nurse Jackie.
But the Emmys, did you like the Emmys?
No.
Yeah.
All right. Shelley Wright.
Yes.
She has a new album coming out.
Good.
But she gets almost no mainstream country gigs and since she came out.
Right.
And so there's a change.org petition. You can go to change.org and look it up to get her, the Grand Ole Opry, to book her.
That'd be great. And I noticed that her movie, Wish Me Away, the documentary is still running on Showtime or something. Look, I love that documentary.
Why didn't that get an award?
Because it was too weird.
It was good.
It was very good because it was her recording herself being scared about coming out, a lot of it.
It's fascinating because it takes her through the coming out process.
Yes.
I mean,
she's looking in the mirror and photographing herself saying, I'm coming out in 5 days.
the political scientist, I don't want to waste too much. The political scientist, Ken Sherrill, this week was chatting about, how gays become Democrats because we were alienated from the Republican Party. He says, but I'd love to do a study on it, but you can't interview people when they're in the closet. But Shelley was giving us the inside scoop about what it was like in the
Wish
closet.
Me Away, the Shelley Wright, Chely documentary is very good. Now, I also went to a screening of the old Billy Wilder movie, Fedora,
Yes.
William Holden.
I saw it 100 years ago.
Well, in 1978, it's actually a fairly late Billy Wilder. But here's what shocked me. First of all, it's a terrible movie, but it's playing at the Film Forum in September. At one point, someone turns to William Holden and says, so you're a faggot? And he says, what? Excuse me?
I'm William Holden.
And she says, a queer, a fairy.
Oh, there's so much of that. And if you look at the movie The Celluloid Closet, they show so many characters. This is a documentary about the history of gays in film. And they show so many sympathetic characters in movies saying faggot and dyke and all those things and in a negative way. It's horrifying. My heart, when I watch the movie The Producers, I think he's a fag. I mean, the way they said it, I know that there's gay characters in it and they're flesh, but it just makes me turn the set off.
Yeah. Well, there you are.
And we're bad gays. We didn't go see Love is Strange, the big Hollywood movie that's out now. I don't know how big it is, but this is with John Lithgow and Alfred Molina as lovers. So Chris Cooper gave us his review, and you can read it online at cfcooper.net, and that's also in our email. But
And
he said
Chris will be here next week, sitting in for the vacationing Andy Hunt.
I'll be in London reviewing theater. Don't rob my house, I have guests there. He said it's tender in the telling, Love is Strange. And their odyssey may lack narrative drive, but precision of the understated performances lets the film convey volumes in ellipses. Phew. The final result, backed by the music of Chopin, leaves a lyrical impression that's lovely in every sense of the word, but you've heard other things.
Well, I have, because this is a story of two older gay men who get married, and one of them gets fired by his Catholic employer.
Ripped from the headlines.
And then they don't have enough money, so they have to leave their apartment, and then they live separately.
Yeah.
It's 2014. Surely they could find a park bench to share, or somebody's house or something.
Well, or as the reviewer in the New Yorker said, they could move to the country. It's cheap out here. They could still be together. So
Yeah.
the premise was off-putting to me. But people have seen the movie. Most people who've seen the movie seem to like it.
I've heard from some who haven't.
Yes.
It's directed by Ira Sachs, who has a long, illustrious history making really experimental and interesting movies.
Well, you judge and send us your comments.
Okay.
Not too many, but a few.
I noticed Logo is doing a new show that is really a Queer Eye for the Straight Guy ripoff. It's like they found 4 new guys doing the same kind of makeovers. And I looked at the promo and I thought, this is ridiculous. What is the matter with this?
We skipped over one item on Love is Strange, the movie, and that is...
the R rating.
Yeah. It seems that the Motion Picture Association of America, is that what it's?
Yeah.
MPAA, those ratings, they insist on R ratings for gay content, even if there's no sex or nudity, which there is not in this movie.
Right.
Apparently there's a little strong language, there's no violence in it, but it's like gay, we have to give it an R because we have to protect the tender sensibilities of who? The lady in
Exactly.
Dubuque, I mean, or what?
Well, but it's this whole mainstream Hollywood conservative impulse. The Emmys were very conservative in the way they handed out awards. They didn't give all the honors to Normal Heart. They gave it to Sherlock. They gave, instead of
Sherlock
giving...
is pretty out there.
Well, it's the BBC Sherlock. It's not the...
right, that's what I mean.
But they didn't give awards to Orange is the New Black. They didn't give awards to House of Cards. They didn't give awards to the Netflix people. They gave them to very mainstream network shows or some cable shows.
Well, you are Ann Northrup, and you're being very open-minded about all this, but as you know, it's a trade show.
Yes, it is.
The people who vote are in the business, and they want to honor the things that are going to, that's why MGM used to win all the time.
But that is
they had the most voters.
And that is why the raters give an R rating to a gay movie. It's ridiculous.
Right. And it's homophobic.
Yes.
And we're working on that.
But we're working on it in more entertaining ways in the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. Go listen to those arguments.
So Chris Cooper next week.
Yep.
Everybody have a great Labor Day.
You'll be back in 2 weeks.
I will.
Okay. We'll see you then. Have a great time.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week, me and Chris Cooper.
Bye-bye.
Bye.